Darrin, I would call this a solid start to finish rundown and final pitch for an array of matches that where I don't know that there's one that feels obviously more important, or even a two or three that feel more important. It's just a good ensemble lineup that I think shows off the strength and maybe the parity in AEW among top stars who are feuding with each other right now. And I think if people are into the AEW product and they've been watching it lately, I think this show drove home and emphasized some of the key points. I don't have a broad criticism. I mean, I could have done without yelling, scissors, lighter fluid, screwdrivers, and death threats. But that's standard for me. I don't think that's necessary. I think wrestling is great when people are fighting for titles, and to humiliate them by pinning them or submitting them. I don't think we need to introduce death threats or threats of burning people alive live in the ring, and I don't think fans buy it. But really, other than that, I thought we saw some really talented wrestlers on the microphone and in the ring doing good promos and angles and showing off what they can do in the ring, leading to the pay-per-view. How about you?
Yeah, I thought it was a very well-rounded go-home show. They were able to showcase everyone that was in the key matches, but without giving away too much. And still will leave you anticipating for which should be a very loaded show on Sunday. I would anticipate if everything comes through. I would have liked to have seen Kenny Omega, because that's one of the matches I'm really looking forward to. And he didn't make an appearance. I'm not sure. And it wasn't a collision either, so I'm not sure if something's going on or if they're just saving him, which could be. But that would be my big downside. I know the scissors and the threat of the lighter fluid. I knew that you would touch on that.
Of course.
And obviously that's going too far, but and I certainly understand that criticism as well. I could have done without that as well, but it's pretty well rounded, and I did like they gave a little time for everybody, and I think the momentum is continuing that they've built up over the past few weeks, and they were very careful not to give away too much. I think that's the big takeaway that I had.
So you mentioned I would have liked to have seen Kenny Omega at Collision on Saturday. Certainly, I was expecting him in person tonight. We didn't get that. I did think the video was good. It showed that there's a history going so far back that Takeshita was a skinny little kid and Omega looked 20 years old back last time they shook. When the first time they shook hands in the ring. I mean, it was fun looking through the photo album of how long that they have crossed paths. And even if there aren't a ton of specifics that are that people are heated up over, because I don't think people genuinely dislike Takeshita. I think they like this match because it's going to be really good. They think these two guys are talented. They think they deserve pushes. Takeshita against Omega. For people who've been advocates for Takeshita getting a push, they think he's a great opponent for Omega to show what he can still do. And that's a reason to buy the PLE, and they just play along with Takeshita being a heel because he's with Callis. And that's fine. The last thing we needed is, I don't know, did Kenny Omega threaten to bury him or kill him or make him breathe his last? Were we saved from at least a death threat or a deadly weapon in this setup?
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
Yeah.
He just only threatened to pin him, as far as I recall.
And that was very refreshing. I mean, I think he did say, you beat me twice. You can prove you're the best by beating me again. But that title, I want it to represent something. And when I win it, it's going to represent. I mean, it was good, straightforward. That aspect of promoting a match is I think what wrestling fans actually want the most. I mean, I do. I think they just want the title to seem important. Like I said, I have a chance to claim myself as the best by beating you. And then Takeshita just said, I'm the alpha compared to you, the Omega. Straightforward stuff, but so that worked. But I agree, it would have been better to have Kenny there. I mean, I think people want the EVP who was out for a full year, who, if you're going to be in the Kenny Omega business and you want people to think it's worth their time and money to watch him, ideally, he would be showing up. It would send the signal it's worth his time to be there in front of them. I don't know why I wasn't there, maybe limited dates or, whatever. But it would have been better for him to be there, even if he's not a great promo, and post-production sometimes helps Kenny, and that video was well produced. Still, I just think showing up is part of it. But it was a loaded show otherwise. I mean, the top stars were there on in front of fewer than 3,000 people in a cool-looking building, but they didn't quite sell it out based on WrestleTix. I thought it was enjoyable 2 hours of what AEW is. What do you think the number one selling point of this pay-per-view is, Darrin? Or do you think the top 5 lists, if you were to poll AEW viewers who are considering or for sure ordering the pay-per-view, how many different would there be 25 different top 5 lists in the first 100 responses? I mean, or top 3 lists, I don't know. I mean, like, I don't think there's an obvious that's the biggest hook, because I think Tony Storm or May for some people would be, Osprey Fletcher will be for some, Takeshita Omega would be for some, heck, Okada Brody King. I mean, it's probably not in the top 3, but I think some people would vote at number 1. I don't think it would average that. And Moxley Copeland, obviously the world title match would be in. I mean, it's just a good ensemble show.
Yeah, you could make the case for several matches to be your big key takeaway. In my case, I still want to see how the Mox against Adam Copeland thing is going to play out, and that would be my top 1, followed by Mariah May against Toni Storm. That one's been unfolding for months, and it's been one of my just favorite angles in a while, and this looks to be the end of the feud. Not necessarily. I also kind of think that they're going to get back together down the line, and they're maybe laying the groundwork for that with some key things said here and there. But those are my 2 big ones. But people can make the case the Omega one is a big one. As I mentioned, we're disappointed that he wasn't there. And the MJF Adam Page, to the best of my knowledge, they haven't wrestled on a pay-per-view. And that's 2 of your big stars, 2 of your key guys going forward. That's a big match, and I could see a lot of people wanting to say that one's the big centerpiece they're looking forward to. And of course, Osprey against Fletcher. I mean, geez, that's going to be tremendous. That lives up to what I think it is.
Yeah. By the way, I want to note to our VIP members and Patreon supporters, I did put up the wrong caller link to be a VIP caller, so I am multitasking and updating that to the correct one. I think just there was an error in it. So on the VIP site, that has now been fixed. And as I am speaking to you, I'm fixing it over on Patreon. So, or I'm trying to here. Let's see.
A little multitasking.
Well, I mean, it's the first mistake I've made, so I'm not good at fixing mistakes. Darrin, without having to get distracted, but I appreciate the comment. So we have some chat room comments on what we're talking about here. So I will start with Zach Barber because he threw in a super chat. You don't deserve the dignity of death. I sentence you to a lifetime of mediocrity. What a line. Tony was great tonight. That was a fantastic line. When I read that, I was like, is that the line that I thought was the line of the night? There might have been one other one that was competing for it for line of the night. There were like, I thought 2 great lines on this show. But I'll look at my report, see if I'm conflating them. But yeah, Toni Storm, Darrin, just kind of staring ahead, barely giving Mariah the attention. Mariah being shaken up. I thought the dynamic was really good between them, and I thought it was the sit down segment with Renee, Mariah, and Tony is the type of thing where if you had not followed that storyline at all up until now, you'd be kind of caught up with what the storyline is, and who is kind of in the mental dominant position right now, who has the advantage and going into it. And I think that's good. I think fans want to see Toni Storm. Mariah May just looked, at the beginning of the interview was pouting. She looked distressed, and Toni Storm seemed to just have total control. I thought it was well done.
Yeah, and that was the key line about mediocrity, and she said it in such a way that she knew it would get to Mariah May, and then she reacted very hurt and knowing that the dig was, that's the one thing she doesn't want to be, is just mediocre or average, and she doesn't want to be destined to that. So I thought it was a very good line, and the reaction from both of them was very good. I liked how Toni Storm was very stoic throughout. The spitting was over the top, of course, but I mean, so is this whole storyline. So I could have done without that as well. But the lines were really good, and the interaction between both of them is just top notch. It's time to probably go ahead and end this and send them in separate directions. I'm interested to see what they will move on to next. But the stage is set for down the line for them to team back up. And I think that would be something that people be very receptive to, something you could slow build to, kind of like the Elite getting back together, that type of thing. So I'm looking forward to that. You're on mute.
I thought I realized the other one-liner that I loved was from Moxley. And the line was, "You have successfully rattled my cage. Congratulations. But those bars we're there for your safety. I thought that was a great line. Like you have knocked out, because I thought Moxley had a really good promo to build up his match with Copeland, which is, you knocked out everybody else. It's going to be me alone now. You got Yuta doubting me, whether he should be loyal to me. I thought that was well done. It's believable. Yuta's been loyal, but he's, he practically turned babyface and then got pulled back into the web, kind of like Danny Garcia with Jericho. And I think people are like, I don't know if I buy this, but he's been real loyal. But in this case, maybe Yuta has some latent respect for Copeland and has been a guy who's been watching what's been going on with Moxley and thinking maybe we're going too far, kind of like Mark Davis thought with Callis, and maybe what Cena will eventually be thinking about The Rock in certain ways, where somebody who joins somebody, be a heel, ends up thinking maybe this isn't for me. So overall, I thought that was a contender for line of the night. So there was a line in here about well, now everyone's mocking me for my mute button. Kyle Fassel says, keep the mute streak going, Wade. Kyle Fassel says, mutometer, love it. And BJF says the Wade mutometer just got reset. Man, you people. All right, from now on, I'm just gonna cough on air. If my dog's making a noise, I'm gonna keep the mic on, and it's gonna whatever. No, it's fine. I deserve it. If I do it twice, then I start being hard on myself. The good part is when I find myself, the fines go back to me. So, yeah,
good system.
It is. It's a. You know what? I mean, it is a little. I mean, yeah, it's unfair for everyone else, but when everyone else gets fined, the money goes to me too. All right. Somebody said, you don't have to worry if Kenny Omega made a death threat, because Kenny doesn't make death threats. He's too nice for that. And I think there is something to that. So, all right. Well, we got a bunch of things floating here. Let's pause. Let's introduce the show, and then let's go to more reader comments in the chat. After that, and essentially walk through the show with the pay-per-view build and kind of evaluate it a segment at a time here. Here Lady B is the one who said Kenny doesn't do death threats, thankfully he's too nice. There it is. Thank you, Lady B. Good to see you in the chat. This is the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Post Show for Wednesday, March 5th, 2025. I'm Wade Keller, host of the show, editor, publisher, and founder of the Pro Wrestling Torch Weekly newsletter and the website PWTorch.com, which, by the way, every Wednesday we're putting up our 5 years ago AEW Dynamite flashbacks and NXT 5 years ago flashbacks. So if you want to kind of relive what I was writing about those shows and just remind yourself what was going on 5 years ago in that Wednesday battle, it's kind of fun to look back and see. So a lot of the same wrestlers are on the show these days. So it's interesting to see who is teaming with whom and feuding with whom, and also some of the names who were filling up the show where you're like, that was doing better viewership than these shows, I'm not going to name names. You can decide for yourself if the star power is a little better and deeper than some of the shows they were using to pad things 5 years ago. But so yeah, check that out. PWTorch.com, breaking news, editorials, flashbacks, as I mentioned, polls, live TV and pay-per-view coverage. That's our main website, PWTorch.com. Over 25 years we've been doing that. Over 35 years the newsletter. And we've been podcasting for over 20 years. So we've been doing this a long time, and we appreciate you choosing to watch us on YouTube or listen to us on our podcast feed. And the podcast feed predates our YouTube feed. We have moved from Blog Talk Radio to YouTube for the live portion. And if you are wanting to join us live, if you're listening to us on the audio-only podcast feed, the way to do it is to go to PWTorch.com or PWTorchVIP.com. Look in my TV report during Raw, Dynamite, or SmackDown, covering that show. There's a link to our live feed. You can also just go to search PW Torch on YouTube. And when the shows are over, you should see that we're on the air within a couple minutes, live streaming on YouTube. So we invite you to do that. And then if you're watching us on YouTube and you want to subscribe to the podcast, because sometimes that's a lot more convenient to listen to our show that way, just search Wade Keller in your podcast app. The red logo and blue logo pop up. Subscribe to both. The red logo are the post shows, and the blue logo is the flagship. And yesterday, Rich Fan joined me. We had a dynamic conversation about WWE, John Cena, Rock, CM Punk's promo, this all affects Cody Rhodes, and we got into the Rhea Ripley situation. So very heavy WWE talk in the main portion of the flagship this week, with that huge angle coming out of it. Kind of glad we get to shift to some extended AEW talk today, although on the VIP exclusive Everything with Rich and Wade podcast, which we recorded right after the free flagship, we did a preview of AEW. So that is up there for VIP members. The other face and or on audio voice you have heard so far is Darrin Lilly. He's a PWTorch contributor, primarily in the written format, covering TNA, Impact Wrestling for years now. And he's now joining me once again here on the Dynamite Post Show. Darrin, thank you for being with me. I think you're relieved, because I know you got a busy day tomorrow, that this wasn't a blockbuster killer show with the most shocking thing ever that you knew we'd have to do 2.5 hours on. So good to have you on. I promise not to go too long. We'll see if I keep my promise. But if you need to have like your Wi-Fi go out if we hit the 2-hour mark or something, feel free. I'll forgive you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Great to have you. Good to have you smiling again. I mean, I understand it's been, a road that we're on. We got to take it a day at a time.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So if you are watching us live on YouTube, join in the conversation in the chat. It's great, environment, friendly place. Keep it that way. And interact, and I keep an eye on it, and we put those chat comments up, and it helps drive our conversation, and it helps keep us in check. If we're forgetting something, or we want to disagree with our opinion, that's great. Another way to participate in the show, if you want to do a longer form contribution, is by email. wadekellerpodcast@gmail.com is the way to email us, and I'll keep an eye on the mailbox, the inbox, as the show progresses. That also is a way, by the way, if you listen to us later on delay on YouTube or on our podcast feed, you can be part of the show even if you don't watch us live, and email is a way to do it. So if you watch the TV shows live, send us an email. You go do something else, listen in the morning or the afternoon on your workout or your commute or at work, whatever, to our show. That's a way to be part of it. And then finally, if you're a VIP member or Patreon supporter, there is a link that can allow you to get in the waiting room to be a video or audio only caller. That is up to you. We are expecting to hear from an outside correspondent tonight attending, so we're going to keep an eye out for him joining us. I think they're taping. Are they taping Collision tonight? Yeah. So there's a chance he won't call in time while we're still in the air. That's the only iffy thing if he stays for whole Collision taping. But I'm hoping he leaves Collision early, or Collision is a quick taping, or whatever. But so anyway, stay tuned for that. It's always fun talking to people who are in the building and sharing those details. All right, let's get rolling on more conversation here. I'll go back to the chat, because there's quite a few comments about things we were already talking about, including big picture on this show. Fan Blast had an interesting comment. He goes, "This show really pissed me off." Strong words. He goes, "Especially that Hangman MJF segment. How does that make it onto TV? I'm absolutely sick of wrestlers threatening to murder other wrestlers." And I get that. I mean, I'm not waving the white flag on it. I just, it's sort of like, I don't want to, I don't know, like, what more can be said? I mean, it's pro wrestling. They should be battling to pin and submit each other, and it's hack, it's hack booking to overdo it. It's I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's just people want to watch wrestling. They don't want to watch people threaten to murder each other. I mean, if you once every 2 years, there might be a feud where someone says it symbolically, like, and you're like, oh man, now they're serious. But when everyone's saying it all, it's like the bitchometer was born, not because I'm a brute and that word offends me. It's because it loses its edge when everybody's saying it all the time. It's just, when you say that, it comes across as, oh, look at me, I'm saying a naughty word, and oh, I've got edge. And when everyone's doing it, it just loses any effect. And it's just, yeah. So, I don't know. I mean, Darrin, do you think? I don't know what phrase you. It's not like a big deal. It just is so unnecessary. And I do think there are people who just roll their eyes at it. And I don't think you want people rolling your eyes at a product, because it's not a life and death. This is a sport, not life and death. And it comes across sort of desperate when they are all hitting each other with scissors and screwdrivers and setting each other on fire and saying, "I'm going to kill you," and you shouldn't have left me breathing. I mean, it gets heavy-handed.
Yeah, that was the exact word I was going to use, was eye rolling. We obviously know he's not going to light somebody on fire. I mean, It's ridiculous. And they repeatedly do that kind of stuff. Sometimes the MJF segments are a little bit of a turnoff and go too far. This was another in the long line of that happening. They need to rein that in, focus on the in-ring stuff. You can make threats, of course, but as soon as you see him bring out the lighter fluid, it's like, oh, now we have to go through this again, and somebody's going to stop him, and he's obviously not going to do it. And yeah, it's just unnecessary. And I think people are tired of the whole trope of it, and maybe it's just something they just haven't realized, or nobody wants to step in and say this is ridiculous to whoever made the suggestion. It's certainly something they need to address. I don't think it's their biggest problem, but it's just one thing that they could cut out and could help move things to focus on the in-ring, kind of like the Kenny Omega feud, where you're focusing on he focuses on losing twice, and they made that a big deal, where wins and losses are meaning something, not people burning up. And just stay away from fire and scissors and that kind of thing. So yes. I would like to see a refocusing.
Yeah, and the thing is, when you're using weapons and threatening people with fire, it's sort of, like hack wrestling.
Yeah.
And when you have a talented roster like AEW has right now, I mean, they're pushing like really talented talkers and wrestlers. You shouldn't have to go there. Like it would, if I was not critical of this, it would be an insult to the wrestlers. Like, oh, well, they need to resort to it. Like, you don't need to resort to it. Like, Moxley doesn't need to be doing that stuff. Hangman and MJF don't need to be doing that stuff. So, I mean, we could list every. It's just, yeah. I mean, obviously, Ricochet is coming along. We'll talk about him when we get to that segment. He doesn't need to be swinging. It's like when Swerve turns around and he blocks it. Of course, he blocked the scissors, because if he didn't, his eye would be, scissors would be 5 inches deep into his brain. It's just, it's stupid. Kyle Fassel says, I think they're grasping at straws to make stories compelling, and they resort to this stuff, and that is the issue. They're resorting to it, but why are they grasping at straws when they have this talented crew and they have 40, 50 years of, like, or further, whatever. I mean, there's not a lot of footage from the 70s and 60s, but they have decades of great bookers with great talented wrestlers doing great angles that they can, essentially recreate. I mean, I don't mean like steal it move for move, but like, oh yeah, in that territory, in that year, this babyface who reminds me of this wrestler did this, and that really worked. That inspires us to do a modern version of it, and it usually did not involve deadly weapons. Like one other comment, Ramen Noodle goes, it was dumb, but not the end of the world. I agree. Yeah, the world did not end. Considering previous events, the threat of fire can be used effectively. This was a waste, though. There's just been too many people threatening fire. And Ramen Noodle does say the storyline was plenty hot without the fire angle. That's what we're saying. Yeah, go ahead, Darren.
Yeah, it's not like it's the dying days of the AWA where they're like, well, how can we make Sergeant Slaughter interesting? You got plenty of guys out there that can make compelling storylines, that talk well, that are interesting in the ring, that you can build storylines around. So you don't even need it. And that kind of adds to the frustration of it. And there was so much good that happened on the show and the momentum that they're building that you just hate to see stuff like that come in where people will focus on that. And it's just something I really wish they would address and just get back to the in-ring stuff. Because when they do that, that's their strength. They need to concentrate on that.
Yeah. And by the way, I don't think the Moxley thing, saying that your mistake was leaving me breathing alone in and of itself would be a bad thing. I mean, that's just sort of symbolic. It's the problem is when you have this promo from Moxley, which was the best promo he's done in a while, which is saying something. His delivery's been good, but I think the content was really good. He was a heel who was saying, you have succeeded in knocking out my support group, and it is just going to be one-on-one. And I think it sold the pay-per-view because it feels like, yeah, now maybe Copeland has a chance because Copeland did succeed in taking out the rest of the Death Riders. And you got Moxley who's angry, but you're watching him, you're like, maybe he's shaken up, maybe he is rattled, he's admitting it. Maybe a mistake will be made. But Moxley was the least of the offenders this time. It just would have been nice if the only reference to someone being dead was the only mistake you made was leaving me breathing. Or whatever. Was that his line, or was that someone else? There's so many. I think Moxley had that.
That was it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I doubted myself for a second there. So, but yeah, yeah, it's possible. That's the thing. But either way, Moxley was really good. And the line about leaving me still with a breath, whether the Swerve or Moxley, I can live with that if you don't have deadly weapons and people setting people on fire and threatening to kill people otherwise. Like, it's not about eliminate all of it. It's just pick your spots and do it in a way where it doesn't feel like you're desperate to do it. But I don't know. Point made. I don't want to dwell on it. It's just they're talented enough to not have to do this, and it's kind of hack. Yeah. So I'm just seeing if there's. Ramen Noodle says like 4 people have been lit on fire in AEW. Oh God. Sadler says, yeah, I forgot about the fire threatening angle. That was really dumb. Nobody's running in here defending it. Maybe they're just, they're scared of what will happen if they do. The chat will come after them. I'll yell at them. So anyway, so let's kind of be somewhat organized here and hit some of the things that happened. So we opened with the contract signing for Ricochet and Swerve. Ricochet made some references to or allusions to Nana, maybe not, having had enough of being alongside Swerve. But I thought that was a big story coming out of last week's show. They didn't emphasize that a ton. The idea that if Ricochet beats Swerve, Nana might leave him, which was weird because it's like, why put that out there last week if that's not going to be this huge thing this week? And it didn't strike me as, oh wow, that was a major thing that Nana said last week. Is this the end of the Swerve Nana relationship? And is that I thought that'd be emphasized, and it wasn't. That said, I thought Ricochet continues to come along, Darrin, as a heel character. I don't think it's unanimous that people think he's on a path to validating a push as a heel, but he's kind of earning my interest in seeing him continue on this road. I think there's some curating, some refining, but that's normal. This is a new territory for him. What have you thought over the last month or two with him, and especially tonight?
Yeah, I've liked it. When he first came on the scene, it was the same Ricochet that we've kind of seen the last few years, but he slowly evolved and kind of changed up his character. I like where it's going, and I think this has a lot of potential. He stands out. He's just not the guy who does the high-flying moves because that has a ceiling, but with that combined with the new personality and being annoying and the little dancing and all that kind of stuff, being a psychopath or whatever the character's supposed to be, that's got a shelf life, and I want to see him once they get beyond the Swerve feud to see how he interacts with some of the other people on the roster. I think this can go a lot of places. Sure, they could phase out the scissors and stuff, and hopefully this will be the last of it, get it out of their system. But there's so many different places you can go with that, and I'd props to him for reinventing himself and not just relying on the same stuff. You combine that and add a whole aspect to his game, and I think, I could see him being pretty, not necessarily the top guy, but taking some turns up there, getting some title shots, that type of thing, and getting some good airtime. So yeah.
Chris Rucker says, so odd Nana walked out on Swerve on Dynamite, and then on Collision he danced his way to the ring with Swerve, who's proofreading the storylines. As far as Ricochet's advancing or progress here, Goodfella said, curating and refining are the words I'm looking for. I'm not fully there in Ricochet's character yet. I love Swerve. And yeah, I'm not all the way there with Ricochet, but I'm not like cringing like, oh, this is Ricochet cosplaying a snarky heel.
Right.
I'm buying, like, I'm watching Ricochet going, is this what he's really like? Like, that's the best. Is when a babyface or heel. Yeah, well, of course. Well, I don't care. I do care. But I'm watching and I'm thinking maybe Ricochet was this bland guy because he was a flashy wrestler in WWE and he had to be a babyface. But in AEW, they got tons of flashy wrestlers, so they have enough flashy wrestlers to go around to be both heel and face. And so Ricochet gets to be a heel, and he's getting to show kind of an obnoxiousness that isn't cool, which is good. If you're a cool heel, you get cheered. Who's cheering Ricochet? They got plenty of flashy wrestlers to cheer. They don't need to cheer him because of that. And he's like, haha, and like but the timing is there. But I don't think people at home are going, Ricochet's showing up. Swerve, I think they're going, I want to see Swerve punch this guy. But yeah, I'm believing that he might have this in him for real. Like it is. And there is an awkwardness to him. Sadler Vision 3 says, yeah, I like that Ricochet being awkward and possibly messing up his words for his character regardless. Chris Rucker says, Ricochet's been great the last few months. He's become my favorite part of the show that aren't the women. CJ LaChapelle said, I heard Ricochet's interview. He said he was going to win Money in the Bank 2019 until they changed their minds and went with Brock. And so, yeah, Ricochet's had an up and down career, but he always was leaned on for flashiness, and he never delivered on promos. And now, I mean, obviously he's being given some creative freedom, and I think he's making the most of it, or he's progressing in an encouraging way. I don't want to use making the most of it. It's a cliche, an empty cliche. Standard Deviation in the chat says Ricochet has the uncanny ability to stumble on his words in a way that enhances his promos. Sadler Vision 3 said, my issue is why was Nana suddenly so pissy with Swerve? When has Swerve shown him disloyalty? So, Darren, your thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, and keep in mind that the whole Ricochet character is a work in progress. So, I mean, he's going to refine aspects of it that work and what doesn't work. So it's going to be interesting to keep an eye on that going forward. As far as the Swerve thing, yeah, there does seem to be a kind of a disconnect going on between if you don't get the road back, I'm going out. Then they came out Saturday and everything was fine. And the announcers haven't really referenced it since, as I recall. Yeah. So maybe they're just going for a big shock if they do split on Sunday, or maybe they just forgot. I'm not sure. But...
I know you as a viewer, you want to have faith that something that you see as noteworthy and you invest thought and discussion and speculation on it, that'll be followed up on in a way that's natural. I mean, the whole key to a believable character is when they act in a way that feels like that the viewer believes that they would act in that situation. Ben Stiller was talking about that on the Severance podcast, or maybe it's Adam Scott. But they're like the job of a character in a TV show, and the director and the writers and the actor is when a situation presents itself, you want the audience to believe their actions reflect what they believe that person authentically would be doing in that situation. Mm-hmm. And the Nana thing felt kind of out of nowhere. And so that's bad. And then the other authentic thing that should be happening is the announcer should be talking about it. Like, what was that all about? And they're not. And you don't like I think one of the, kind of guideposts of wrestling TV presentation there should be like a list that everyone's reminded of regularly, because it's easy to kind of get lost in just the routine, is announcers should never seem like they're in on the con, that they are on the side of the viewers. And that they're not trying to cover up bad booking. They're not trying to redirect people in a way that's unnatural. The product should hold up to the announcers almost being a third party who aren't part of production meetings, don't talk to the booker, don't know what the script is. They're just sitting down calling the action, and their job is to react to it. The booking should be solid enough to hold up to that. Now, I wouldn't actually vote for that because it could be troublesome, but the announcer should feel that way. It shouldn't feel like they're hired hucksters. It should feel like they're there to enhance the product and call it for the benefit of the viewers at home, not to try to forward or exclude some obvious comments that everyone is thinking, but they're not allowed to say because the booker is trying to swerve people or distract from something.
Yep. Or start whining about Canada, that type of thing.
Oh, God. Yes. So... Standard Deviation said, if Nana's turning, they prioritize swerving the viewer over character consistency. And yep, that boils down what I'm saying. Barry Wood says, what do you expect the modifications to Nana's robe are going to be? Because Ricochet said, I don't have the robe this week, but you'll see it Sunday. It's sent away for modifications. I have no idea, but I do wonder. I mean, there'll be heat. I mean, they made that robe believably sacred to Prince Nana. And if he defaces it, and I mean, I think people will be genuinely mad, because I think there is an affection for Nana, just regardless of what he said last week about maybe abandoning Swerve.
Yeah, maybe the sleeves will be cut off or something like that.
Yeah. It'll be, yeah. It could just end up being very tacky. Yeah. So I mean, a Standard Deviation just says, I forgot about the Nana angle. I guess he's turning heel on Sunday, and they didn't want to draw attention to it this week. So a mid-level booker will plant a seed and then unnaturally ignore it until the angle, because they want the angle to be shocking, but they want it to be something where they can go, see, we planted the seed for it 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, but then we stopped talking about it because we wanted you to forget about it until we did it. And it's a technique, and it's not the worst thing, but it's kind of mid-level booking. It's like, good booking should be you devise an angle that you can talk about, and even if it still happens, it's still satisfying to the viewer because you're watching something play out that makes sense, and it feels unnatural to just abandon it. But we'll see. Darius Roby speculates the Robe probably got scissors on the shoulders or something. So, be,
like Road Warrior spikes or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. Who knows? All right. Oh, and people are speculating. Sadler Vision 3 says Samantha wanted to work angles and not just be a ring announcer anymore. So this would be a perfect opportunity for her to become his manager. And she was brought into the conversation tonight. So, spoiler alert, we'll see.
Yeah. I would like to see Ricochet further establish his own act before bringing her in, but I think she's very talented and could add to that. But I would like to see him refine it just a little bit and get that character down before he starts adding to it.
Kyle Fassel says Samantha would get cheered. I don't know.
Probably.
We'll see. Maybe. I mean, it depends on how good how
she might be obnoxious too.
That's the thing. Yeah. I mean, together they might just be like, geez. God, no, you guys are awful. Boo. Goodfella 1422 says, I think we see her as a character in AEW, short term or long term. Who knows? She needs to scratch that itch. And Chris Rucker says, yeah, he should demand Samantha introduce him every match.
That's not a bad idea.
Darius Roby says maybe the robe does that laugh on its own. Haha, just as it moves. It's like got some speakers built into it or something. I don't know. Okay. So, outcome of the match, Darren. What do you expect to happen in this match?
Well, I think Swerve is going to win. They might continue with the robe thing, but because he got beat tonight, he lost in their prior encounter. I think he's about due. And Swerve's one of their top guys. He gets the good reaction. I don't think he's on TV enough, at least on the in-ring appearances. So he's someone that does need momentum. You don't want to beat the guy 3 times in a row. So I think they'll maybe continue the story, but I think we'll see a Swerve win.
What do you think is it's such a kind of a cliche question. I'm ashamed to ask. But what's the ceiling for Ricochet? Like, do you on the trajectory that he's on, how he's doing right now? How do you feel about, like, is he shedding, or does it matter if he's entertaining the idea that he was a kind of mid-second tier jobber to the stars type of flashy novelty wrestler in WWE, but not really portrayed as a true top guy?
I think it's a fresh start so that past stuff doesn't matter. I think we can see him flirting with some main event slots. Again, kind of like I said earlier, not necessarily the main guy, but he can be, I don't want to say the challenging for the continental title or the international title. I could see him winning that, but maybe I don't necessarily see him as the AWA, the world champion, but maybe just flirting with that spot, kind of how they've had like Christian doing, where you knew he wasn't going to win the world title, but still gets those title matches. So I could see something like that. But I don't know, maybe if the character takes off, who knows? He might get enough heat where they want to go ahead and slide him, see somebody beat him for the title.
We talked a lot about Ricochet, but I thought Swerve was good here tonight. In his role, he actually stumbled on his words a couple of times. The crowd chanting Swerve's house kind of saved him a little bit. The syntax, I think, at least twice got a little messy. It wasn't a big deal, but remember Swerve. I didn't, when he first started cutting kind of longer promos, it came across like this is kind of a new thing for him to be a centerpiece babyface promo guy. But it's fine. I mean, people need reps to grow and kind of get more comfortable and all that. But I thought, he knows who he is now, and there's a real cool factor to him. When we talk about AEW having a cool problem with Pointer Sisters intro song, which only lasted 1 week, and Jeff Jarrett and the Outrunners, but that's a self-aware kind of retro type thing. Copeland becoming Cope, and that was kind of part of it. It's just like there's a whole collection of things that just and Big Boom AJ, my God. But Swerve, and frankly, this was a show that seemed like Tony Khan is cognizant of the cool issue, because there was I thought this was showing off the Hurt Syndicate weren't on it, and some would argue they're the coolest act in the whole promotion. But everything else, Kenny Omega's kind of weird, kind of awkward, nerdy, whatever stuff that can be endearing, but they haven't really leaned into. That wasn't even there either. So Moxley was cool. Yeah, I thought it was AW putting kind of their cool acts and vibes out there in a positive way, and Swerve was part of that.
Yeah, Adam Page, even though he got outsmarted like 3 times, and Jay White was out there, and I think he definitely falls under that umbrella as well. We'll probably get to the women's match. Megan Bayne, Tony Storm was featured a couple times, and I think that she would qualify as that as well. And yeah. So yeah, they were showcased very well. Ospreay, he certainly falls into that category, and he's the first guy out for a match.
So we'll move on to the build to Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher. There was a tag match with Ospreay, Powerhouse Hobbs, Mark Briscoe, and Orange Cassidy beating Brian Keith, Mark Davis, Lance Archer, and Brian Cage. Ospreay ended up hitting an Oscutter and hidden blade on Keith to get the win. Afterwards was the angle where Kyle Fletcher came out. His cohorts held Ospreay down. Ospreay took a beating, and Kyle Davis was like, this is going too far. And then he decided, okay, but I guess to be relevant or whatever. And then he ended up just
peer pressure.
What he was told. And peer pressure. He ended up hitting Ospreay in the back with the chair anyway. But there was a hesitation there. I guess a little critique would be maybe don't do that on the same show that you have Wheeler Yuta kind of breaking from a heel group. Although one could say, well, it's interesting. Yuta seemed to stand up to this being too much, and Kyle Davis gave in. Mark Davis gave in and took orders from Kyle. So maybe the contrast was intentional, but you got to be careful not to do two of the same thing on one show. Maybe they were different enough or complementary and not contradictory or redundant is a better word. So yeah, what do you think of that angle, Darrin? What was a good or bad aspect of that?
Very well done. It just struck me while watching it that Kyle Fletcher is one of their success stories. He's a guy who just months ago was just kind of a, I don't want to say background, but just a tag team wrestler.
Yeah.
They've really done a good job of showcasing him and putting him in a top spot, and no one even questions it. Ospreay is like maybe arguably the number one guy, in-ring guy, if you want to call him that. And people don't bat an eye that Fletcher could beat him, and the presentation of him, the way they had him come out and everything was very cool. Announcers were saying very complimentary things about him, which is a key aspect of it. I'm just very impressed with how they've showcased him and featured him to make him seem like he's one of the top tier people. I thought it was very well. The match itself was very good, but I thought the key takeaway was just how Fletcher's could become a centerpiece guy. He's somebody they might be relying on going forward, and how he's overshadowed Mark Davis. They made to point out that Davis was the veteran of the group and how Fletcher was just kind of ordering him around. So that was another aspect of it that was well done. So,
I just think we need to take up a collection basket for Kyle Fletcher to get some carbs, because my God, he just cut my. And I think almost too cut. I mean, it's in the eye of the beholder. But he looks like he's out there for the cosmetic aspect and not the fighter aspect. I don't know. I mean, it's a small thing, but Kyle Fletcher looked plenty athletic and intimidating without this crazy extreme carb cut. That it's just I'm just looking and those abs are very present, and congratulations, and that's great. But I feel like he's miserable. How can you be that cut and still be happy? And it's just, I'm not saying potato chips, have some sweet potatoes. Those are healthy. There's healthy carbs, but, just a little bit of fat. All right. Anyway, it just, his body has transformed. But yeah, Kyle Fletcher, no, on a serious note, I'm sort of serious there, but on a more serious note, Kyle Fletcher is really good. And when he cut his hair, I thought he lost something distinct, and I still feel that way. I think it's a little interchangeable with his look when he shaved his head. But I mean, whatever. That's not a huge deal. He's coming across like a guy you want to build around as a heel. And it's tough because I don't know if Fletcher or Takeshita are the alpha in that group, or are there kind of two equals? I guess I'm a fan of, in factions, having a sense of hierarchy and dynamic. And we don't get that enough. It doesn't feel like any thought is put into that. And I kind of want to know how Fletcher feels about Takeshita and Takeshita feels about Fletcher. And does Cal's play favorites at all? If he had his choice, who would be going for the world title versus secondary title? And I think it's worth establishing that, because you can use that to, not right away. Don't hot shot a turn or a breakup or even tease it. But if you establish that baseline now, it does give you something to work with later that doesn't feel just rushed when you later decide to have them play off each other. And not a huge deal, but I think that would raise the Callis family up a bit. But maybe they just don't know yet because it's a hard
That's
choice.
what I was going to get to. Yes, and they're maybe being patient, playing the long game to see who emerges and kind of elbows the other person out and emerges who's the top person. It hasn't been determined yet.
They could tell that story. Like literally, I would if I'm Tony Khan, I'm telling the announcers, who do you think Don Callis favors more? Takesha's in a big match, Fletcher's in a big feud, a cage match. Who are they battling within the Callis family for more of Don's approval or to rise up the ranks? How will the other feel about it? Like, just plant some seeds. That's a natural thing. I think people watching are wondering when you see a faction. There's Roman Reigns, and then there's the Usos, and then Solo comes along, and that dynamic of everybody's really interesting. And then Jacob Fatu when Roman's gone, and he loves Solo. What is that? It's like just have those lines going different directions, like in the flow chart or the there's a term for it. Where you just this person thinks it this way about that person thinks that way. Add some layers and granular detail to the dynamic in one of your top heel factions, if not the top heel faction. So that just it's not a criticism of the product. It's just a suggestion to enhance what I think has been the best use we've seen of Don Callis on a consistent basis since AEW started. Because the Callis Omega heel thing could have been great, but it wasn't consistent. Yeah. Kyle Fletcher says Kyle Fletcher will be the guy one day over there. Standard Deviation said Kyle's promotional work in Australia was first class. I view him as a top guy in wrestling. Goodfellow 1422 says I really like Kyle Fletcher's work. We do need Fletcher versus Miles Bourne to see who is Orton's true son. Intrafaction interactions, says Standard Deviation, trying to give a catchy title to what I'm advocating for. Okay. So Ospreay Fletcher, what do you expect? They have the cage match. Who wins and why? Where do things go from there, Darren?
I think Ospreay needs the win because I imagine he's going to be in the world title picture here coming up. So I can see him win it. Match should be spectacular, though. Yeah, really looking forward to that one.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I wonder if it's going to be the show opener, perhaps, just to set the tone for the show.
I don't want to follow it. Yeah. So, but if they. I could see MJF Hangman being the opener also. Just like it's sort of like the second most prestigious spot on a show because what it says, if it's a big match and not a clear opener, what you're saying is it doesn't deserve to be the second to last match. We're going to give it its own showcase with a hot crowd. But I think there's a number of candidates to be the first match. I mean, I even the Hurt Syndicate tag title defense wouldn't offend me, but that'll probably be a padding match, just kind of break the tone. So, yeah, if you open with Fletcher Ospreay, then I think you could do the Hurt Syndicate Outrunners tag match as sort of a change in tone to let people take a breath and watch a more traditional, lighter, slightly comedic match. By the way, let's just talk about that. I don't have to go super in order here. What do you think of the Outrunners 1980s VHS tape workout video? And what do you think of the Outrunners getting this title shot to begin with?
Oh, it looked like something right off of Jim Crockett Promotions that would have fit right in.
Yeah, or Memphis Wrestling, AWA. The AWA played music videos all the time in the mid-'80s. They called them a special look. And then they just
special look. Yes, with the little graphic.
Yep. I mean, it was the MTV era in pro wrestling. Latched on and they put those clips together. It was fun. I mean, it felt like this authentic window into the past.
Sure, yeah, it was no Wrestle Rock Rumble by any means, but it was good.
Yeah,
I just wonder where this is going. Are the Outrunners going to get just run over, and this is it for them, or because if they're competitive with the Lashley and Shelton, I don't necessarily know if that's a great idea either. So I really want to see how that plays out.
Yeah. Goodfellas 1422, by the way, says 80s vignette was perfectly horrible. I loved it. 4 out of 5 stars. LOL. Kyle Fassel says the Outrunners video tonight was a shout out to the Thrill Seekers in SMW. I don't know if it was. Kyle, do you know that like legitimately? Like, was it I remember Jericho and Lance Storm seeing their first video, and I was like, okay, but that felt like an early 90s callback to the Fabulous Ones music video that Memphis aired, where Steve Kern and Stan Lane were like in a hot tub together, and they were supposed to still be cheered by I mean, it's worth looking this stuff up on YouTube if you can find it.
Dancing in the top hats and oh my gosh.
Yes, and then you had the Fantastics, who were a knockoff of the Fabulous Ones, Tom Rogers and Bobby Fulton. They had their own version of these music videos, and then the Midnight Rockers and the AWA had music videos when they were a knockoff of a knockoff of a knockoff. And the Rock and Roll Express were part of it, and then you had Ken Timms and Eric Embry, who were the Fabulous Ones. We're talking about that on the Fix this week. They were a knockoff of a knockoff of a knockoff. I remember the magazine cover when the Fabulous Ones left Memphis, and then Eddie Gilbert and Tommy Rich teamed up as the new Fabulous Ones. Yes. And it was like, no,
this will work.
No, that was not going to work. Tommy Rich was 3 to 4 years going on 40 years past being a heartthrob. People sometimes you go, this person never ages. With Tommy Rich, you blinked and he aged 40 years, from the magazine heartthrob guy to you've lived a hard life, haven't you? He's like, I'm 26. It's like, no way. So, all right. So what happens in that match? Standard Deviation predicts the Outrunners are getting squashed and says that makes the most sense to me. It kind of does to me too. I mean, they haven't invested. I mean, they've been around and kind of become cult figures, Darrin, but mostly on Collision. They're not actually a serious tag team. They sort of fluked their way into this match. I think it's important for Hurt Syndicate that they win and win probably pretty quickly and decisively. What do you think?
I just wouldn't have done it against the Outrunners because, I mean, they have the little cult following. They're fun with the little videos. You can do different things like that. And they had the little ESPN thing where they came in and gave the locker room speech. And I don't know if you want to say momentum, but little fun things like that. I would be hesitant to run over. I mean, from what I understand, they sell merchandise too. And I would just be hesitant to. They
can sell merch while losing. They're not selling merch because they're winning. They're selling merch because they're this ironic flashback, lovable
there might be
doofuses.
some truth to that. Yeah.
Well,
we'll see.
GWF ESPN 1992 says the Fabulous Ones were on horses and bow ties in that video. LOL. Oh my god. I mean, by the way, we're not just picking on wrestlers. That era of music videos for like rock bands was super cheesy too. I mean, like. It's cringy fun to go on a binge of like some of the earliest music videos. I'm kind of getting in the mood for that right now.
Yeah, watch the Billy Squire "Rock Me Tonight" video. The video that killed his career. That's just fascinating.
Okay. I'll do that. Sadler Version 3 says, I hope it's a squash because the Outrunners do nothing for me, but I doubt it. Kyle Fassel said that they need to destroy teams. I don't know. I think he's not talking about the Outrunners. I think he's talking about Hurt Business, but right. but maybe not. Let's say Kyle Fassel. Let's say it's the Outrunners. Yeah. I don't know. Ramen Noodle, bad era for porn as well. Okay, Ramen. Take your word for that one. Kyle Fassel says I'm a VHS collector. And Barry Wood says I made a few films on VHS, so it's cool with me. All right, fun stuff. So let's go back to Dynamite, and we had. We referenced it, the Wheeler Yuta Adam Copeland match, and angle afterwards. Copeland beats Yuta with a spear. Back and forth match, competitive. Afterwards, Copeland shook Yuta's hand. Oh, the announcer set the stage well for this because Copeland came to the ring and approached Yuta kind of respectfully and kind of eased into the match. And the announcer was like, I thought Copeland would just come out like going after Yuta because he's like, oh, he's so mad at the Death Riders and wants to just knock them out one after another. And Copeland just kind of beat him, kind of straight up in a fair way. Afterwards offered a handshake. And in a way, it was kind of a way to show up and also send a message to Yuta. And he said, this is what respect feels like. And then he dropped the mic and left. And Yuta did not seem offended by that. He actually seemed to contemplate Copeland's words, which upset Mox. Mox came out and chewed Yuta out. Followed him to the back, then cut a really good promo. So I thought it's a good way, like babyface. You want babyfaces to be respectful, show respect, have honor. Not in every case, because I mean, there's a range of exceptions. You can have shades of gray in a babyface character as long as they're consistently fighting heels and there's a reason to like them overall. This was Copeland just kind of. It's almost like the what was it, Karate Kid 2? Like he pinched his nose. The Mr. Miyagi like pinched the nose of the evil karate instructor instead of punching him. It was a way to kind of like do something to not humiliate Yuta, but send a message that I could do worse. But I'm not. I'm gonna shake your hand. Maybe you ought to think about this being a better path for you. What'd you think of that?
Yeah, it was intriguing the way they did it. Because the first thing I expected was he was going to be eliminated like the rest of them, but no, he left a little bit of an opening, and now that leads some intrigue. Is Yuta, is this finally where the split's going to happen, or is he just going to continue to blindly follow Moxley? So they're setting up some intrigue there, and I like the way they did it. Also want to give props to Adam Copeland because he's totally not dogging it in these matches. He's really going all out. He's not just getting out there and just dogging it. He's putting in the effort, putting in the work, and it's fun to see.
I think with Copeland, he hasn't won over all the AEW fans. Like some crowds aren't really reacting to him. Australia, it was a nice ovation for him, and I understand that it's our first time to see him in almost ever, or for most fans ever, in person, and they've watched a lot of his history. But Copeland's a guy who he can't get it all back in one promo, and a lot of times it felt like he was trying to get everything accomplished in one promo, and it felt a little melodramatic and over the top. And this just feels more authentically him. He's not crazy-eyed and sitting in the back and I'm gonna get. It's like he's not doing that stuff. It's just it feels like this is who he is. He'd be a guy who would go, you know what, I'm gonna show up Moxley by not doing what he would do, which is beat the crap out of Wheeler Yuta and brutalize him, try to prove a point. I'll do that with his other guys, but this one, I can hurt Moxley by luring Yuta away from Moxley's philosophy. And he did so in a way that was kind of understated, in a pro wrestling version of understated too. This is how you show respect. So I like that. Copeland is having good matches, solid promos. His character isn't over the top. Like, I need to earn your respect with some yelling, frothing at the mouth type thing. I thought this was him in a lane that works.
Yeah, it's a good look for him, and not which he has done a lot towards the end in WWE when he was doing those big theatrical soliloquies. It was becoming a bit too much, but this is understated and a good use of them. So I like this Cope.
Yeah. 27 Newsman said it's almost like Yuta has been human trafficked by Mox, and now Cope is setting him free. Kyle Fassel says, I want to see Yuta versus Mox again. Still one of my favorite AEW matches. It was on Rampage years back. Yeah. Goodfellow 1422 says, have Yuta go on his own and own Collision, become who he is. He should have tried that with Starks first. Good stuff there. All right. Jay White came out later, beat up Max Caster in the Max Caster Open Challenge. I'm going to talk about Caster separately, but Jay White said, I'm going to be there to see Copeland win the world title. That's in real life what friends do. In pro wrestling, as Joker's Nuts in the chat says, it was nice of Jay White to remind us that he will be turning heel on Copeland this Sunday at Revolution. I hope White goes over in the eventual feud. So is that what's happening, Darren? Is Jay White, did Jay White just signal in classic pro wrestling trope that he's turning? And should he? I mean, he's been a largely undefined character, and he's sort of a babyface by context, but not really changing. And is that better for him or not? What do you think?
The way they set up his character, it wouldn't be out of the blue for him to do that. I mean, he hasn't been over the top sappy or anything, so I could see it happening. But also the way they almost telegraphed it, or maybe that's just us reading into it. Maybe it's just a red herring, and he really does come out there to save whatever calamity is going to happen to Adam Copeland. So maybe the way they did it, so maybe that does set up some intrigue as well. It was so blatant if you know what to look for, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't think he's turning.
Good. Standard Deviation said, I love the way Jay looks deadpan into the camera before saying Cope. I didn't catch it. I'll have to revisit the visual on that.
Yeah, I didn't catch it either.
Yeah, Kyle Fassel says, I'm down on Jay White. I think he's so watered down in AEW compared to New Japan. We'll be down on Tony Khan and using him as a pawn to fill in a match when things went wrong for MJF. And I don't know. I think Jay White is a vastly underutilized act in AEW. Who's cool, cuts good promos, has good matches. I just don't think Tony Khan fell in love with Jay White in New Japan, and it was reflected in how he was portrayed. Sadler Version 3 says, yes, Jay White should turn back heel. He's a bad babyface and uninteresting right now. Kyle Fassel says, heel Jay White with heel juice is money. And Sadler Version 3 says, I know record shouldn't mean anything, but I noticed how bad Jay White's record was when he was doing his entrance. And it's confirmed that he's been booked badly in AEW from day one. Standard Deviation said he's done that a couple times now. It's like Jay is mocking the name in reference to the deadpan when he said, cool. But King of Strong Style asked the key question. If he did turn, would it even matter? I mean, it wouldn't matter in and of itself because they haven't been together long enough, and it felt like an odd pairing. So you'd go, oh, they teamed them together without forging any kind of bond that the viewers experienced in real time because they wanted to turn them a few weeks later. And that's what it would come across as. But so it wouldn't matter when it happened, but it's not a bad thing to set up, Darren. If you think Jay's better off as a heel and you're looking for somewhere to go with Copeland after the feud with Moxley, that's a way to get there. But you can't feel like, okay, now we got him hooked because Jay White turned heel on Copeland. No one's going to be surprised by that. And some are going to kind of roll their eyes or yawn like, okay, big deal. Jay White was barely a babyface. You have to earn it after that. But I think Copeland and White could cut some good promos to build that up.
Right. If they were to go in that direction, which I guess it wouldn't be in the world, but I think that's a compelling feud for both of them. Both good talkers, and ring would be very good. And they have enough outside people with them where you could keep it fresh going forward for a couple months or whatever. So, and I think it would benefit both of them. Adam Copeland gets to work with, a top wrestler, and it could give Jay White a big credible win at the end of the thing. So, yeah, I think that would benefit both of them.
So I didn't want to talk about this anymore, but I have a rule. If a super chat fits the show, we're going to honor it and put it on the screen. Zach Barber. Does anyone take someone threatening to kill someone seriously? People say that to other people all the time. It's a figure of speech. So my quick response is, in wrestling, they're threatening to set people on fire. They're putting plastic bags over their head. They're swinging scissors at their eyeballs and skulls and brains. They're jabbing them with screwdrivers. Yes, if you say it as a figure of speech in real life, you don't generally, but it can get you in trouble. It can get the police to pull you in and have a little chat with you. I mean, it's not nothing when you threaten to kill somebody. So, but in wrestling, they are trying to kill each other. That's the problem. If this was a sport, maybe it's said in MMA, but I think it would get them in trouble with the sports commission. Like, no, you don't get to threaten to kill people. You don't hear it in the NBA or NFL. I don't know where you hang out where people say that to other people all the time either. I mean, different people are around different types of people. Maybe you hear that more than me, Zach, and you're numb to it. But when I hear someone say, I'm going to kill you, it kind of goes, well, I thought you just wanted to win a match and get a title and make more money and get TV time. Why are we talking about killing people now? So, Darren, what do you think?
I mean, the context of it does matter, but yeah, they're going beyond that, and they're actually doing the physical act of pulling out matches and putting lighter fluid out. So that's going a step beyond of the figure of speech. I'm trying to kill each other. They're actually going out and trying to do it, and that's two different lines. So yeah, I think it's still going too far.
Yeah. I mean, Sadler Version 3 says, I'm a hardcore MMA fan, and I rarely ever hear death threats, and that's a place you'd think you'd hear a lot of that stuff. Standard Deviation says, death threats are the verbal equivalent of doing 5 tombstones off the top rope and then kicking out at 1. I think that's good. I think that's, Standard Deviation says, sure, you can do it, but it takes you out of it. And Kyle Fassel says, they're not just saying they want to kill each other. And
right.
Yeah, that's the point. And then this is where Standard Deviation says, you need that Scott Hall audio that I always reference, Scott. I got to find that. Clip. If someone knows what segment of the Scott Hall Torch Talk interview that we're running in our 18 years ago flashbacks right now on the VIP site, it's a phenomenal interview with Scott Hall. We're on part 18 right now of it from 18 years ago. Let me know what part it's in, and I'll put it as a clip, and we'll play it every time there's a death threat on a wrestling show. Well, not every time, but we'll have it handy when this discussion comes up. Standard Deviation says, and Scott goes, no, you're not. That was his, like, when people threaten to kill people, Scott Hall goes, "No, you're not." Like, it's just the delivery's great. He says it was posted in December, he thinks, part 10 or 11. So that helps. Thank you, Standard Deviation. If you know exactly when it is, email me. I shouldn't have to give out homework. I should just go find it. But realistically, if I get an email on it, I'll go just snip it right away if I know exactly where it is. Kyle Fassel says, "What did he say in the clip?" So I've said this. He just completely shames anybody who ever threatens to kill someone in a wrestling promo, and he does it in just a peak Scott Hall way. Just why it's the dumbest thing you can do in a wrestling show. Although you might revise that to like the 16th dumbest thing, if depending on how much wrestling he's seen recently. So let's see. Fanblast says, "I'm absolutely convinced Zach Barber's purposely trolling at this point. I don't get the ultimate purpose. A for dedication, though." So there we are. Okay. Let's see. So we talked to Yuta and Mox. Well, I did enjoy the fake MJF and MJF setting up, because it makes sense. MJF's like, "Come get me," and when he sees Hangman, he runs. Then Hangman gets in the building, and he finds somebody with a scarf around his neck who looks like MJF. And then that guy apparently paid handsomely to take a beating from Hangman Page, knowing that would happen. I mean, that's a little flimsy part of this. You want me to dress up as you so I can be brutally attacked by Hangman, who thinks it's his number one enemy, and this is the guy who burned someone's house down? I get an extra $100 for that? Okay, sure, sign me up. Like, I'd like a little explanation for how this happened.
Well, MJF's making $15 million, so according to this recent interview that came out, so he can afford that.
Let's put my headset back on here. He's making $15 million according to what? I pulled my.
He did some interview that came out today, and he said that he was making $15 million or something like that.
Say he's making 50. I mean, just why not? Why not make 50 if you're making 15? All right. By the way, speaking of Scott Hall, Kyle Fassel said, "Very touching episode of Kevin Nash's podcast right after Scott Hall died. I suggest listening if you haven't before." And Standard Deviation saying it's over 5 years, so $3 million per year. I memean, it's not out of line with what MJF might have been able to sell Tony Khan on as a potential that he would be earning. But I haven't seen the contract. It's on the higher end. I would think it was probably overpaying if you're Tony Khan based on the marketplace. It's no shot at MJF if that's real. But also, it's wrestling, and wrestlers want to make them seem like big stars, and MJF wants wrestlers in WWE to be jealous of his schedule and how few matches he wrestles, and look at the money I'm making compared to how long you had to work to get here. So I mean, it's character projection too. So I don't think I don't dismiss it out of hand, because it's possible Tony felt like, I need MJF so badly, and this guy's young and talented, and I'm friends with him, and I'm a billionaire, and it's not that big of a deal. Or, yeah, come on, no way. So we'll see. Let's see. So getting back to the next. Any thoughts on that phony MJF? I think I got.
No, I was fooled. So. It was a nice twist. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, good twist. Outsmarting Adam Page. So yeah, it's cool.
So we talked about the Storm Mariah segment. Anything more you want to add on that, Darren? And then just what do you expect coming out of their match on Sunday?
No, just to give them props for continuing to just be an entertaining part of the show. And I'm really looking forward to once they go ahead and do the end of the feud. The match itself, I think, with the Falls Count Anywhere is going to be really good. And I think they're going to rise to the occasion for it. But I'm ready to see Toni Storm, who her next feud will be against, and how she incorporates the whole movie thing into somebody else that's on the roster. And see what's next in store for Mariah May. Does she fall apart? Does the predictions come true? Does she become mediocre, or whatever happens? So, and then as they do the slow build where one of them's getting beat up and they come to the other one's aid, like months down the line. So yeah, you've got that potential.
Yeah. What do you think of the Max Caster Open Challenge? Caster's becoming a, kind of lower second tier, third tier comedy figure. He's proud of that plaque that shows he really legitimately has this trademark on Best Wrestler Alive. And then it's just a gag where he loses, but this comes back and keeps claiming it absurdly. Is it a Does it work? Does it fit the tone of what AEW should be doing? Is it Max Caster underselling himself in what he could have been, but he's kind of settling for this now? What do you think?
I think it works for now. I'll leave that wiggle room there. I think it works. It makes him stand out, and he's getting a reaction for it. It's not something he couldn't come back from. At some point, he's going to have to get some wins to get credibility back. That's what I'm worried about. But if you can be patient with it, let it play out, and see where it eventually goes, I think this is making him stand out and establish himself. So I'm not down on it.
Yeah. Standard Deviation says, love Max Caster. I can't see where this is going long term, but it's entertaining right now. And he says, I like Max right now. Is Bones injured? I don't know if I don't think Bones injured. I think he's just laying low. Just give Caster something to do and take some time off and come back. It's possible he's injured. I haven't seen reports on that or heard of it. And part of why I haven't even asked, it seems like it makes sense that you would want Caster to have his own thing going and then let Bowens just kind of come back in a different way. Tag teams breaking up and feuding with each other, it's like one of the most overrated, underwhelming things that happens. Like when the Usos are fighting each other. Oh, it's Ricky versus Robert, or it's Hawk versus Animal, or it's Arn versus Patoli. Like always, it just isn't a great way because they're usually together as a team because there's chemistry as a team, not they'd have great chemistry feuding with each other. That's different if you put two top stars established together as a team. Mega Powers break up or something. They were already established top stars. They're two stars teaming up, Austin and Shawn Michael. I mean, you can just pick up Vern Gagne and Mad Dog Vachon. Well, they team together after feuding, not vice versa. But contrasting personalities or established stars who team up and break up can work. But two guys who were put together because they weren't established, they weren't ready to be centerpiece single stars, and you put them together and then they break up and wrestle, it falls flat. And I think that could be the case with Bones and Caster. But I'm not sure. After all that, I mean, there is part of it just feels like as long as they team together, and what a big angle that was. I think when Bones comes back, it's possible the storyline is they're not going to feud with each other. Bones going to try to talk Caster out of being a clown who loses all the time and go, what are you doing? Goodfella says Max is too young to have the R-Truth spot. Well, he's got a Grayson Waller spot too. I mean, Grayson Waller's a little bit older than Caster, I think. So I don't know. What do you think? I mean, what do you think of the idea that Caster comes back and Bones comes back and says, Max, what are you doing? You're better than this. Come on, let's go on away for a couple of weeks. Let's have a chat. Let's get you back on track and let's reunite the team. Or so I don't know.
I hadn't thought in that direction, but that could certainly work because I'm not really looking forward to them having a feud. Or, I mean, you could do a one-match thing, sure, why not, to just resolve it and bring some closure to it. But I'm not looking to a drawn-out feud between the two for the reasons you kind of stated before. Doesn't seem the most compelling way and never quite pans out. But that is a different twist that I don't necessarily know if they need to go back together as a team, though, because it seemed like they did run its course, but maybe this will freshen things up, and then you can add them back to the tag division. So maybe just to shake things up a bit. Yeah. I would like to see that direction. I hadn't thought of it, but it's a good idea.
Caster is 35 and Grayson Waller's 34, so they're very essentially the same age. That. So, they both got pushes a little bit later in terms of national TV, and but so I'd compare more to that than R-Truth. Just kind of the obnoxious guy. I mean, Waller's treated a little bit more seriously than Caster right now, but historically Caster had a little more of a push had more success in the tag team division than Theory and Waller have. Caster, there's a talent there. I mean, there's something there, and I felt at times he could have been a breakout, top of the second tier, bottom of the first tier type of guy, like your fifth heel or baby face, who visits a little higher. And, he's not great in the ring. And I mean, Tony Khan wants super flashy and, New Japan or Indie or PWG cred to give someone a push. And I understand that's sort of the genesis of the birth of AEW and at the core what people love about it. But I think Caster had something that went beyond edgy line crossing raps and being a good tag team wrestler. But now I think he's defining himself down into something different, but it can be useful. Sadler version 3 says Acclaimed is a whole is better than the sum of the parts situation to me. I still want to see what what Anthony Bones can do. If
Yeah.
I wouldn't hate him being in a tag team with someone else. Just just a different type of a partner. But I also could see him being a good singles wrestler, kind of in the way that Danny Garcia and Wheeler Yuta during his run were pushed, and maybe a little bit higher, more Garcia than Yuta in terms of how he's portrayed. He's really talented, and I don't know. Yeah, so I'm fine if he's I'd rather see him at this stage get a singles push than Kyle O'Reilly or Roderick Strong. I mean, and I like O'Reilly and Strong. I respect their work and all that, but I just think that people could go, oh, what's going on with Bowens? He's sort of new as a singles guy. There's a journey that isn't fully explored. And with O'Reilly, it just sort of feels like, he's, he had his chance in NXT and he did that weird dance when he got pushed as the, underdog, the rising baby face, and it just was awkward and didn't work. And now he's just relegated to being a kind of a legacy mid-card guy who's a good hand in the ring. You can get more out of pushing somebody fresh in the singles division. So,
sure.
Yeah. Statler Version 3 says Waller has more upside than Caster, in my opinion. What do you think about that? Who is
Caster?
Yeah. I do too. I'm not down on Grayson.
No, I just not. I mean,
yeah.
Just doesn't click with me. There's nothing wrong with
yeah.
Nothing wrong with him. He's talented, but.
So the only Okada Brody King build we got was in the main event tag, right? I don't think there was anything else promoting that.
No.
Yeah. So, but they're battling for the Continental Championship. I mean, it was fine. I mean, it's not a big selling point for the show, but I like Brody King being in that spot. Speaking of people with an upside, I don't know if he's lingered as a guy who has an upside that's not being taken advantage of too long now for it to really, feel fresh if he does get that push. Because the original Continental Classic, he was like, oh, he's a rising star, and then a whole year went by and nothing changed. And oh, look, he's in the tournament. I don't think they move quick enough on him, and it's sort of baked in now where he is. But he's going to be a good opponent for Okada, I think.
Yeah, he's somebody I'm really high on, because going back to ROH days, and I think because he was in the tag team division, in the 6-man division, I don't think he's been slotted where people just don't buy him as a singles competitor. It's just kind of, if they reframe it as he's just a guy that was in tag matches, but now he's breaking out on his own. And if they show the history, I mean, they have the rights to the ROH footage to show him dominating. Was he ROH champ, or was he just contending for it? I don't recall. I can never remember if he was actually the champion or not. But regardless, he was like a top guy there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, in singles competition, and he's a unique. Just his look is unique. He can do good on interviews as well, and he's somebody that I mean, you can get a lot out of, and I think this will be a big test. I'm glad that they added that to the pay-per-view, and that's another one I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Any other match we haven't covered that's on the show? Oh, Mercedes Momo Watanabe. Mercedes cut a promo. It's just, sort of perfunctory. I'm going to talk about my opponent. I'm going to beat her. There's going to be a match on Collision where she's going to get, softened up, and then I'm going to have a cakewalk. I mean, it was fine.
Yeah, it was standard from her, and I think she's continuing to get a little better on these heel interviews, which is kind of her bread and butter. The babyface style wasn't necessarily suiting her. I think they still need to show some more background about her opponent, who I've heard good things about, but I'm just not very familiar with. And they did show a highlight package a couple weeks ago on one of the shows, so I mean that's sufficient. But heading with the big sell, maybe they'll do that on Collision on Saturday.
And there's part of me that's like, on this lineup, I don't know how much TV time I want invested in Momo. Honestly, I mean, it's there to be a good match, and it's there to serve people who know that this is a bit of a dream match for people who follow international women's wrestling. But really, what can you do? Do you really want to take TV time away from Brody King, who barely got any? Or do you want to take, sometimes you just a match isn't there where, I mean, and I'll be critical, well, let's give some context to it. But in this case, it's of the 9 matches on the pay-per-view, it's 8 or 9 in terms of selling this event. I mean, I think the Outrunners are going to sell more pay-per-view buys than this Mercedes Moné match. So I don't know. I'm kind of okay with what they've done, just because it's there to be an, you know, AEW's brand as we look outside our own boundaries for great matches, and this will be one of them.
It's a fair point to point that out. I think really they should have just switched course and continued the Harley Cameron feud, because that was picking up some momentum, and you had somebody who crowds are really getting behind in Harley, and you could have continued that, but they cut it right off, and I think that was a big mistake. It's not something you can recover from, but I would have went with that and done the rematch here at that show and continued that momentum. I think it was a bit of a misstep.
Yep. Okay, so let's go to the inbox, and if we hear from our outside correspondent before we're done here with a couple emails, we'll bring them on. If not, we'll wrap up. So let's begin with Shay from Brooklyn. Who knew Ricochet as a weasel heel was his calling? The way he sells getting beat up is even top notch. It's rare that the same guys open and close the shows, and I see that double appearances didn't hurt the heat at all during the main event. I believe Swerve is the next title challenger, so feature him prominently tonight was great. He carried himself with top guy energy, and the crowd is very behind him. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, that he brings up a good point, that was out of nowhere. That character that Ricochet's doing is out of nowhere. I would not have expected that. I wouldn't necessarily thought to even go in that direction, but it's really working for him, like we talked about before. And we agree that Swerve, him and Moxley, that's a very considering if Moxley goes ahead and retains, it's a very compelling feud, and I would really like to see that.
Yeah. All right, the Mariah and Tony promo is simple and great. Tony has unique promos, completely different than anyone else. She manages to do silly, yet serious very well. Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's people who are big fans of Tony Storm's work. I am. Some people don't like it, don't get it, don't think there's anything to get. But I think it's distinct, and, you know, I think she's... I enjoy her character, and I think it's enhanced her value to AEW.
Yeah, I think she's one of the top people in AEW, and could be a breakout star for them. And Mariah May has carried her end of it as well. They gave her the ball, she ran with it. She was a background character like a year ago, and now she's one of the... I think she had a good title reign. You could argue about some of her interviews, that type of thing, but I mean, still a work in progress. But I think she's risen to the occasion as well, and just props to both of them.
Yep. All right. Shay just says the Revolution card doesn't just look amazing on paper. The majority of these matches feel earned and well developed. They've done a great job building excitement. I'd say it's one of the more well built pay-per-views they've had across the board. And I think it's sort of like the build has been like B plus across the board, touching on A-. There's not just a standout like, whoa, clear main event. They've really there's a crescendo, and then there's some good supporting matches, but they're clearly not the main event. This just is an ensemble show of, again, like I said at the top of the show, I think different fans would rank the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 matches on the show that they're looking forward to very differently. I don't think there'd be a consensus, but that's fine. I mean, that's one way to have a good pay-per-view is, a bunch of B plus matches and, or really good matches on paper with B plus builds that aren't really like era defining or year defining, but they're good. That's what we have here.
Yep. I would agree. Yeah, you're gonna have a few that could steal the show.
Yeah. Kyle Fassel says, kind of was down on the show and product. It wasn't terrible by any means, but I don't feel too compelled by any of the storylines. I'm not trying to hate. I'm rooting for AEW. I'm just being honest. Sadler version 3 says AEW feels like they're in a similar spot to WWE at the end of 2024, where not much is awful, which is rare for this company in my opinion. But nothing knocks my socks off either. Show is just steady and solid. Let's see. GWF ESPN says, I enjoyed the show. I was already sold on the pay-per-view, and it wasn't a blockbuster show, but it was fun. So, yeah, I mean, just some kind of echoing, I think. Everyone's saying a version of the same thing. Like, I'm looking forward to it. It's good. No big complaints. Shay is saying it looks amazing on paper, and the matches feel earned, and they do feel earned. It doesn't feel just thrown together.
No.
All right. Shea also says, even the Death Riders have gained more interest in the last few weeks. Pivoting away from fighting for the soul of AEW has really helped. I agree. The conflict has felt way more straightforward. No more cryptic promos. Just Cope going after Mox and his heel faction wanting the title. The crowd going from Yuta sucks to positive Yuta chant shows me they're invested in the story going on. Also shows what a great heel Moxley has become. It'll mean something for the guy that finally beats him. I mean, no question, the Death Rider and Moxley have benefited from dropping whatever cryptic mission statement he was on that just got abandoned. So I'm fine abandoning it because I don't think there's any way to save it. And what is the alternative to it is really good.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It seems more focused and more relatable. So that's always a good thing.
Yeah. All right, another nice showing for Megan Bayne. They really have something with her. The 8-man party match was a fun way to open. Hobbs really has something as a tough guy face. I'm happy he's been consistently on TV since his return. Overall, a fun go-home show in the arena tonight looked really nice. I love the arenas AEW's been booking lately. Same with NXT. The smaller venues come across great on TV, especially when they have the unique look and invested audiences. There's pros and cons to being in a smaller building well lit versus a major venue with dark lighting, but you see the ribbon, you got the big stage, you're in the major. Not everyone at home is aware, if you're clever with the camera angles, as AEW was clever with, that the building is as empty as it is. But you can't do 3,000 in a 18,000 seat building. I think like 4,500, 5,000. There's almost no way to make the crowd look good if it's 3,000. And AEW has dropped from 5,000 or 6,000, which was a danger zone, now down to 3 pretty consistently. Now, maybe that's the venues, but they didn't sell out. There are some tickets available, according to WrestleTix, at Showtime, a couple hundred still that could have been bought. So it's not like they turned anyone away. So what do you think about these kind of historic, smaller venues that look like they've seen a lot? A lot of markets have buildings like this one that are kind of cool. They went to a wide shot. The crowd's right on top of the ring. Not quite Manhattan Center on top of the ring, but it's or the Queens of New York, but it looks intimate. I think there's an energy that the crowd has when they're surrounding the ring instead of on one side of the building and everything is darkened. And I think that's underrated. I think fans get more into a product when they feel they're part of a packed or semi-packed house versus in a cavernous building that almost nobody showed up for. And I think it's almost like a permission structure to be in the product when it feels hotter. So overall, I'm with Shea here. Well, how about you?
Yeah, it's looking good since the smaller buildings, like when they did, was it the Hammerstein Ballroom? Ever since then, they've been doing kind of like the smaller buildings, and they've been filled with enthusiastic crowds. They shot creatively. I like the thing where Wheeler was coming in, and they did that. So they've been getting creative with the camera shots as well. That combined together, and the crowds have been picking up as the storylines and action have been on a roll lately here. So that is combined to make a better visual product. If you're not going to draw, if you can't run those big NBA stadiums, stop doing it, because obviously, as you pointed out, 3,000 and an 18,000 seat, it looks ridiculous. So you go with what you have and make the most of that. And that's what they seem to finally have been doing. So good for them for finally running the small venues that look good when they're packed. So keep going with it until you're ready to go back into those big arenas.
I think the concept of seat fillers seems kind of silly to me. It's like a little obsessive, like, if you're going we need someone to fill a seat if it's on camera. But there was a whole front row on the left side that was or 2/3 of the front row on the left side was empty at one point for a wide angle shot. I don't know where all those people went, but that was in a small venue like that, as well lit as it is, I'd have some seat fillers ready to go if you're going to lose 8 or 9 people in the front row right at ringside. That was weird. Not a big deal, but normally I'm like, what are seat fillers for? I'm like, maybe that's what they're for. Okay, finally from Shea, another nice showing from Megan Bayne. They really have something with her. The 8-man party match was a fun way. Oh, wait, I read that. So the reason I still have it highlighted is Hobbs. Shea said Hobbs really has something as a tough guy face, and he's been on TV consistently. Where do you go from here with him? Is he just a utility guy who does big power moves and is part of tag teams, or do you is he there waiting to have something implemented that feels more substantial?
Yeah, because he's another person I think you can do a lot with, and since he's not on the pay-per-view, I think you can kind of put him in the background for a little bit, have him at least he's showcased in on TV, which you can. It's not everybody's getting that opportunity until the next pay-per-view where you're ready to put him in a feature match. So there's nothing wrong with that. I think they featured him very well for somebody who's not on the pay-per-view. So I don't think they've given up faith on him, and I would look forward to him being on the next show, but against an opponent that will spotlight him better.
Yeah. All right. Next, as the chat speculates on if Darby dies on Mount Rushmore, should they have a backup plan for who beats John Moxley? It was almost talking about like you pass dead body corpses on your way up Mount Everest, because it's like there's no economic incentive to pull people to the bottom. Like you're risking your life to pull dead corpses down to the bottom, and there's nowhere to put them. And when you climb Mount Everest, there's like human remains. It's a dangerous thing to do. Like a certain percentage of people die doing it, and a standard deviation. So there's a lot of luck related reasons why people can't make it to the summit. And he goes, Darby can't win the title if he doesn't climb Everest, and it's a weird thing to say. So anyway, there's just side comment on the chat. So we'll move to the less what's the word I'm looking for? Gruesome topic here. So JB from Detroit. Going back to last week's post-show conversation, the Rivian E-Truck fit the Hangman character perfectly. He's known as the anxious millennial cowboy for much of his run. He isn't your standard Western cowboy. An old beat-up F-150 would have felt inauthentic. Yeah, he was in his Rivian EV pickup truck again this week with a customized horns on it. A great vehicle, and I think people see him as more liberal leaning, I think, in what he's put out there publicly too. So it can be sort of the anti-Elon EV that American based and American made EV that you can like feel good about driving and not have to have a bumper sticker that says part of the I saw a bumper sticker, the anti-Elon Tesla club member on the back of a Tesla that was in front of me at an intersection. But anyway, so it's 2 weeks in a row. I don't know if it's his or someone else's in the company or a rental or whatever, but we'll figure that out one of these days. All right. JB says, do we think that the likely final two matches in this version of the Storm May feud were just coincidentally in Australia, Tony's home country, and LA, perfect for the Hollywood ending, or was it possibly something that was planned out? Interesting. What do you think?
That's something I had not considered. I think it's a coincidence. It just kind of, the Australia one wasn't coincidence. I think they were aiming for that one, but this one just kind of happened. One of those happy things that fell into place.
Zach Barber to the rescue. The word I was looking for is morbid. He is right. I was looking for that word. All right. JB says, I like the fact that MJF filmed his show opening promo via grittier self-recording. I didn't like him maniacally yelling into the camera to end the promo. Yeah, it's almost like he's just defiantly yelling, just like to see. I don't know. I'm not going to go off on yelling again, but he's too talented to just end his promos with hack yelling all the time. First 12 minutes of the show were the antithesis of ideal Wade booking. MJF yelling into the camera, Swerve telling Ricochet he's going to put him in the ground, and then a double scissor spot. Yes, we have covered that. Okay, so JB says, what do you make of AEW pay-per-views now being available on Amazon Prime? Is there anything to read into a related AEW-Amazon relationship in other capacities? I don't know the answer to that second part, but it's a partnership. I don't think AEW is looking for a buyer, but what it does is it gives AEW a chance to be on a platform that isn't completely reliant on Warner Brothers Discovery, WBD. They've had so many names over the years, and I've covered all of them: Time Warner, Turner, all that. So it's good that they have a relationship with another major media player. It's just from a pure business standpoint. Now, if something goes haywire with WBD, or they go like TNT and TBS become irrelevant and Max ends up not being a good partner, you've got a business relationship with Amazon Prime. So, it's smart for AEW to do that, just like it's smart for WWE to be on USA Netflix and the CW. Darren, what was your reaction to the news that AEW pay-per-views are now available for purchase through Amazon Prime? They're not part of the streaming service with a Prime membership.
It's good. It just makes it easier for people to order. So that's always good for business, more platforms. And just a click of a button. So I would imagine buys might increase. So it's a good move.
Yep. All right, and then tonight's venue was very cool and unique. The crowd was great tonight. They were even into the really bad contract signing and gave wild heat for Mark Davis getting bullied into attacking the faces. There are too many multiple men matches tonight with guys who really didn't need to be teaming together for the sake of the pay-per-view build. It felt like a bit of a lazy go-home show in that respect. It wasn't bad, but it was formulaic, like WWE go-home shows under Vince. It was formulaic. I mean, we just throw a bunch of people in a match who are involved in pay-per-view matches and let them wrestle and tell a little story. I mean, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want it all the time, but I mean, it's just one way to have a go-home show. Let's have 2 singles matches and 2 oddball tag teams, and it's gonna give you a tease of what's coming up.
Right.
Yeah.
Perfect setup for a go-home show.
Yeah. So is Cope shaking hands with Yuta and telling him this is what respect feels like, in contrast with Mox bullying Yuta post-match, foreshadowing Yuta seeing the light and breaking away from the Death Riders in the near future? Obviously, yes. I don't mean to be. I mean, like, it's foreshadowing that as a possibility. Now, does it for sure happen or not? I mean, who knows? I mean, Yuta could be pulled back into the dark side by Mox. Perhaps as soon as Revolution, or is it all a ploy for Yuta to aid Mox at Revolution? I don't think that was a ploy that Mox worked out with Yuta, because Copeland saying that's what respect is all about was unforeseeable from Moxley, so they couldn't have had an alliance ahead of time.
Right.
So I think it is what it is. It looks like Yuta's having second thoughts about the tactics of the Death Riders and Mox, and he wants to be his own guy, and deep down, he's not as evil as Moxley. I enjoyed the sit-down interview with Mariah and Tony tonight. I think this feud will go down as the best and most important feud in the AEW Women's Division history. Having the Queen of the Ring director was a nice touch. I could have done without knowing what the Queen of the Ring director's video collection entails when it comes to the nude scene that got cut from the movie. Like, I didn't think he needed to say, "Oh, I have that in my private collection." It's like, TMI, come on. Like, that was like kind of an eye roll, but it was good. I mean, yeah. Otherwise, it was good. Good promotion, but I don't know. We don't need to know that. Scissors and lighter fluid. They really pulled out all of Wade's favorite bells and whistles tonight. Yeah, it just kept getting better. Thunder Rosa had an interesting new look tonight. I thought it worked well for her. I think Mercedes playing into how many ridiculous catchphrases she has with Renee was actually a positive thing. It shows she's self-aware of how obnoxious she's being. It's what you want out of a real clear heel. I'm glad JB brought that up, because there was something that felt a little more grounded and real about Mercedes tonight than we've been getting. Darren?
Yeah. But yeah, that, as I kind of referenced earlier, she's doing better on those heel promos, and that kind of, I guess, some kind of nuances is working on those, and she's just starting to hit her stride.
Yeah. Max Caster trying to start the impossible rhythm chant was a nice touch and gave me a chuckle. Yeah, I love that. Max Caster is the best. He will win every match forever. Chant that, whatever his chant was. And then the announcers under their breath going, "He used to have rhythm. What happened? What happened? He used to have rhythm." I enjoyed that. Finally, where does Jay White stand in the AEW World Title scene? With Swerve and Ricochet wrestling for number 1 contendership at Revolution, it seems as though they were positioning him as the next title challenger to either Mox or Cope tonight. Yet it seems, by virtue of current stipulations, that seems a bit off in the future. I don't think Jay White comes across like he should be getting the next title shot. I think he's one strong feud win away from that. Darren?
Yeah, I would not say just yet, but yeah, maybe he goes up against Copeland and see what happens after that. But yeah, not just now.
All right. Darren, anything else you want to add about tonight's episode of Dynamite or the pay-per-view coming up? I don't think we're going to get our on-site correspondent even though it's almost 2 hours since Dynamite ended. So it's hoping he would sneak in by now. But you know how that can go. So yeah, anything else you want to add before we sign off?
No, I think we hit everything.
Yeah. Good conversation. Good, and Jan. I do want to plug you. You've got your Impact reports, either like Thursday night, very timely. On rare occasion, like tomorrow night, a little delayed, but that happens. But a great Impact coverage over at PWTorch.com. So everybody check out Darren's coverage of that show. Are you enjoying the WWE tie-in, or did you like them when they were more independent?
No, it's fun. It's a nice change of pace, and you never know who will pop up. And the Hardys run has been fun as well. And like I mean, like Obafemi's over there now, so it's a nice change of pace and adds some freshness to it. So yeah, I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yep. Let's see. Yeah. So PWTorch.com/govip is the way to get VIP coverage, which will include our live post pay-per-view show tomorrow night, Sunday night, after AEW Revolution Impact's tomorrow night. That's on my mind. So if you're a VIP member, you can hear the roundtable. Rich Fan will be joining me for that on Sunday night after missing the WWE Elimination Chamber pay-per-view roundtable last weekend. And Rich Fan was also my co-host on the Blue Logo show, the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling podcast yesterday. If you have not listened to that flagship yet, there's some kind words in the chat complimenting the flagship last night. I think we had a good discussion. On the Mark Wrestling podcast says, great flagship today. And Kyle Fassel said the flagship was a good listen. Although Ramen Noodle says, I love my VIP sub, but these YouTube post shows are my favorite Torch content these days. Thank you, Ramen. But if you want the full VIP experience, become a PWTorch VIP member. PWTorch.com/govip gives you all the options, a chance to access our archives, just dig deep into what we've been doing for 35 plus years, 20 years of podcasts, hundreds of retro radio shows from the 90s, back issues of the Pro Wrestling Torch newsletter dating back to the late 1980s, and a customizable VIP podcast feed for commercial-free versions of this show, along with our VIP exclusive shows. You can also just jump in and get a 7-day free trial of our VIP podcast feed. This doesn't give you access to the archives that a full VIP membership does, but if you're mainly here for podcasts, it's a great way to go. Get a 7-day free trial, and you can hear all our VIP exclusive coverage of the John Cena heel turn, and also get our Sunday night pay-per-view coverage of Revolution. Go to Patreon or Spotify and just search PWTorch VIP. And a 7-day free trial is an option. There's multiple tiers there for subscribing. Also, Sunday night after AEW Revolution, Brandon LeClaire will be hosting here on YouTube the live AEW Revolution pay-per-view post show. So join him live, and then and then later in the night or the next morning, you can download the VIP roundtable, which will be audio only, VIP only. But we will have our AEW Revolution post show on Sunday night, just as we did on Saturday night after WWE. Extreme Rules. Thank you so much, everybody, for continuing to support us. Be sure to like and comment on the show and subscribe. Yeah, we hear that's a good thing on YouTube when we get that kind of feedback. And so, yeah, this is a good time to like the show, comment below, and subscribe. That'll do it for today. Thanks, everybody. And we'll talk to you Friday night after SmackDown, if not sooner, on the VIP side of things.